All right, this is lecture 3 for the Cold War, and today we're going to kind of focus on the responses to internal threats. There's a few that we're going to talk about today, and we're going to mostly talk about Joseph McCarthy and the impact that he had on our society during the 1950s. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the House Un-American Activities Committee. It's shortened for HUAC, and basically what they did is they investigated extremists, and one of the biggest targets that they had was the movie industry. They felt that the movie industry was really important because people were such big fans of movies that they had such a broad impact on our civilization. So if everyone sees movies and they put communist, like pro-communist information in movies, it's going to impact a lot of people, and people are going to believe in what they see. So they start blacklisting people, and basically they're denying subversive jobs. And in Hollywood, there were 10 actors, producers, writers. Some of them were notable, and they were blacklisted and were unable to get jobs. Okay, then we also have something called the McCarran Act. It's also known as the Internal Security Act. And the Un-American Activities investigated aliens, so anyone from outside the country. They could be denied citizenship if they were found that they were to be communists. And if you were a naturalized citizen, you could actually even lose your citizenship if you were believed to be a communist. Alger Hiss was suspected of spying, and he was convicted of perjury. We don't really know for sure if he was spying on the United States for the Soviet Union, but we kind of believe that people believe that he was, and he always claimed his innocence, but the United States ended up convicting him. He was sentence was 2 5-year terms that were to be served concurrently, which means at the same time. So he ends up being let go after 3.5 years. And finally, in the Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, they are two people that obviously they were married, and they were convicted of being spies, and they were actually executed using the electric chair, and they were quite brutal deaths, and they were basically convicted of selling bomb secrets to the Soviet Union, and they were the first citizens of the United States to be publicly convicted and executed for spying on the United States. And there is actually evidence showing that they were tied to the Soviet Union and were selling bomb secrets. People believed it wasn't a fair trial and that the punishment didn't really fit the crime, that they should be killed for what they did, but it ended up happening. All right, so those are some of the internal threats that we had, and because of these threats, we start to have some real scares going on. So there's a senator. He's from Wisconsin. He's a new senator. His name is Joseph McCarthy, and he creates an era of our history that is really scared of communism, basically. So this is similar to the first Red Scare that we had earlier on with Joseph Palmer or Mitchell Palmer and the Palmer raids. There's really not much evidence that's ever found of these people that are accused of being communists, but McCarthyism really rises up, and people are really scared that there are communists all around us spying on us. All right, so this is Joseph McCarthy. He's a Republican senator from Wisconsin. He's claimed that several communists have infiltrated our government agencies. With the Rosenberg trial, and then also there was a bomb exploding. It's kind of a fear that these communists are in, and they're going to take over. So he said there's anywhere from 57 to 205 communists that are harbored by the state Democratic Party. So he's going against the opposition party, and he believes that they are guilty of treason, and they should be allowing government or communists in the government for 20 plus years. So he is thought of as kind of being crazy and kind of a witch hunter, and people bring up McCarthyism all the time whenever they want to talk about someone who's like searching for someone or trying to find people that are like hiding or whatever. A lot of his colleagues were scared of him because they didn't want to be called out by him, because he kind of had a lot of power during this time, that people would kind of believe what he said, and then those people would be tried and maybe possibly go to jail for treason. There's a set of hearings we'll talk about in a second. The Army McCarthy hearings, they kind of lead to his censorship, where he is no longer allowed to speak out, and that happens in 1957, and then 1954, and then he dies in 1957. He's able to actually hold his Senate seat for those 3 years, but he really turns to alcoholism because of kind of his downfall, and he dies in 1957. All right, so McCarthy and Truman. Uh, there's a telegram sent to Truman, um, or sent to McCarthy, sorry, and we don't really know if this really ever actually happened, um, but we'll see. But we're going to kind of look at it and see what it says. So McCarthy basically targets the Marshall Plan for the loss of China, the fact that we didn't really go after them hard enough, and then Mao Zedong comes in and takes over China over Chiang Kai-shek, and so that's kind of he's blaming Truman for that loss, or in the Marshall Plan more specifically. So he claims that Democrats and Truman were soft on communism, and he also kind of goes as far as to say that they're allied with communists. And Truman said that McCarthy was the best weapon of the Kremlin. The Kremlin's like, the Pentagon for the Soviet Union, and he's basically saying that, he's creating fear in our country and is breaking us down from the inside. And he's basically sabotaging our foreign policy. And he says a quote. He says that he's shooting American soldiers in the back in a hot war. It's like the same sort of thing, even though we're in a Cold War. So you can see that the war going on between one of our senators and our president. There's a show on TV. A guy, he's a notable newscaster. His name is Edward Morrow, and he runs an expose on McCarthy. And McCarthy feels that it was that he had crossed the line between investigation and persecution. And so Morrow gives him the opportunity to come and refute the charges. He accepts, so he goes on his show, but he does a really bad job. And this really starts to show his decline, because he's really not able to refute the accusations of Morrow. So here's the Army McCarthy hearings. They last for 36 days. It's headed by the Army Chief Counsel Joseph Welch, and it's these are the congressional hearings, and they're held on TV. And he's basically asked to present a list of communists working in defense plants, and he has attacked employees of Welch for being members of communist groups, which is a violation of agreement. And he's eventually charged. He charges, or he believes that the Army is giving like favorable treatment to one of their former staffers, and he's just kind of making wild accusations, and he looks really bad. So the fact that these hearings are televised really, really hurts him, and it kind of shows that his downfall and the fact that he's not really that credible. And so the hysteria around McCarthy kind of starts to fade away. So he ends up being censured. So he talks about a lot of sensationalism and how, the Senator Margaret Chase Smith, she talks about how McCarthy is always about sensationalism and how she fears communists and fascists from both sides of the aisle, and that she wants to unify the nation. And so he's eventually formally censured in 1954, and then he dies in 1957. So it's really his downfall. He starts to get alcoholism. He starts drinking a lot, and kind of like drinks himself to death. Right, so it's a really tough time in our history where we have a lot of accusations going on, and it's coming from one side of the aisle across the other. So Republicans start to worry about liberals or Democrats and the fact that they may be communists, and it all ends up, all these people are charged, and no one's really convicted, and it's kind of like just a witch hunt that really goes nowhere, and it really does more of a tearing us apart than bringing anyone together. All right, that's it.